out in Reedley, California, and we're diagnosing a 2008 Ford Fusion that has a bunch of electrical issues, mainly because it has a branded salvage title to it, so it must have gotten a pretty good front end smack on here to actually total the car out. He just noticed this stuff recently. I guess he really didn't pay attention since he bought the vehicle. So he has a bunch of electrical issues on the vehicle. He has wipers that work, kind of, but they park wherever they want. They never actually park in the proper position down here. His sync system doesn't work, his horn doesn't work, and I believe his AC system was having problems, and it's making one heck of a noise whenever the AC is turned on in the vehicle. So I'll show you what I found. I diagnosed everything on here already. We're ready to head out, but I'm going to bring you along and show you what I found on this particular vehicle. Okay, so the first thing I diagnosed was the wipers, and make sure that they work properly for them and that they park properly so they're safe for them to drive in the weather if it ever rains out here in California again. So I'll show you what they do. They're off right now. Okay, intermittent 1, it kind of works, right? 2, 3 intermittent, 4 intermittent, 5 intermittent, low works fine, and high works just fine. You go to turn them off, and they stop wherever they so please. Alright, so the thing I concentrated on was the wiper park run relay. What this relay does is it provides power to the wiper motor so that it can actually run as the smart junction box so commands, but it also is used on the 187A pin to park them, and that park signal comes from the wiper motor itself inside of there. So it'll give it a power signal to that relay and allow it to finish parking, and once it gets the park position that it senses on the motor itself in there with the park sense switch, it'll give it a ground. It'll turn it off. So basically, once you turn off the wipers on this vehicle, the smart junction box throws its hands up and it just cuts it off completely. It's up to the wiper motor to finish parking the wipers on here. So it'll continue to give it power until it's parked, it senses it, and then it'll cut it off to the ground on there. So what you're going to need for this particular circuit is an extra pin on the relay. So I pulled the relay out, and it's right here, and I didn't even do no real pin test on here. I just made sure that each one of the pins that were supposed to have power in there had power. Load tested them just fine, same thing. What I found is that going through the wiring diagram is it needs that 87A circuit to actually finish parking them. That's the signal coming from the wiper motor. Look at this one right here. This relay has no 87A. 87A is the auxiliary terminal that goes right in the center there. There's one each side for the coil in there to control it, and then there's an input and output side on there, and that's the big blades on here. And this one should have another blade in the middle. That's the 87A. So this one does not go there. So what I found next to it is another relay right here, which probably is not right, considering the design of it is for the older ones. You can see all the newer ones in here are gray and they're bigger and just different design. These are for like the older Fords, but they still do work. And this one has the center pin terminal in there. Okay, and you can see the socket it was in does not need that center pin terminal for whatever circuit that's for. So what I did is I simply took this one and I put it into here. Okay, so it has all the terminals and it works. And I took this one, which has all 5 terminals on it, and I've stuck it into here, put it in the right spot, in there, and you can already see the wipers automatically parked on there. Now watch the operation of them. I'll go through it once again. We're off right now, intermittent 1. That works much better also. Each time you go to eat another interval of the intermittence, they should turn on instantly as soon as you go to the next step on there. More intermittence. And then that's the 5th intermittent, which is the fastest. And then this should be low and high. So all the operations work on here. And anytime I want, I can turn it off and it parks. Same thing with intermittence. Turn it off, they park. Go to low. turn it off, and they park. So it's that simple sometimes to diagnose these. What you got to look at when there's any kind of crash involved, body shop involved, is hack job wiring repairs or misplacement of the proper components like that, the relay in there. So I'm glad I was able to diagnose that, so it works for him. It looks like he just needs some wiper blades on here. I know I can't say that right. And he'll be good to go, instead of spending a couple $100 on a wiper motor and all that other stuff. So good to go. That one's diagnosed. The other issue is a sync issue. The sync issue, the module is actually locked up on there. I cannot talk to it to update it or program it or anything like that. Anytime you go to use the module, you hit the phone button on here, it locks up the module. So it's probably old software level, but until it comes out of being locked up on there, you really can't update it. So the other issue was the AC issue. Listen to this. This would freak me out if I just first heard this. Okay, so we'll start the vehicle. Sounds good, sounds normal. Okay, let's put the fuse cover back on here real quick. Alright, so I got the vehicle started and it's idling full hot, back down to base idle, 700 some RPM, and it sounds good. Like it should. Now once you put the AC on, it sounds like the thing's throwing a rod or the timing chain's coming apart or something in there. It sounds really bad. So hit it. And the AC compressor just kicked on and it put that load on the engine. It sounds bad. So I was thinking these AC lines right here were knocking together. Engine mount was grounding out potentially. Heat shields, but it has too much of a thick, it's not a tinny noise, it's more of a thicker metal that's making that kind of noise on there. And it sounds more like aluminum instead of steel also, just how the thud is on there. So I looked around, tried to find where the noises come from, front cover, stuff like that. And what I found was the tensioner was so bad on here, the spring and the tensioner for the belt, it couldn't handle it. So once the load gets put on it, it's trying to tension it and let's go. And it keeps doing it, and it's hitting the stops on there, and it's making that noise. I had a Grand Marquis come in one time that sounded just like this, but it sounded more like they were making popcorn under the hood. It was really weird. It wasn't constant like that. And this one kind of makes the same noise. So I'll show you how it looks inside of there. Get my flashlight out. Once you isolate to an area, and they put a light on it, and you have someone turn the AC on and off, that load, you'll see it stop. You kind of correlate the vibration and the noise to the component. So we'll bring you in here. My light works. Down in here. You can see it in there. Turn it off. So you can see when the AC is on, that thing's just chattering full length, the full length of its drive on there. It's got a certain path for its min and max on there, and it's maxing out every time, constantly. When there's no load on there, it's kind of floating in the center, but it's floating way too much. So you can tell based on when it has no load on it, and when it has a load on it, that thing is just moving way too freaking much. And once you get down here on the wheel well, you can really isolate it and put the noise of the component on there. So again, luckily I was able to diagnose that and pinpoint it without pulling anything apart on here. And we also know it's not a base engine concern where it could, potentially come apart. So we just have to change a little tensioner on there. So another cheap component to change on there. So it's good so far. And the last thing I had to diagnose was the horn. The horn does not work at all, and first thing I had to do was make sure that it was still there. A lot of times these body shops, especially in certain areas, they'll omit parts like that got damaged in the crash that they deem non-essential. So the horn was still there, looked undamaged, and so I came inside the cabin here and I pressed on the horn pad to make sure that the airbag, it sounded just right in there. There's springs in here to bring the airbag back, and then there's contacts in here that send a ground out to the horn relay. So I'll press on that, and it feels good as far as the return on there. Nothing seems lodged or the airbag partly in there or anything like that. So the next thing you listen for is the horn relay. Luckily it's right here underneath the dash, so we just be quiet and we can listen for it. So every time I press on that horn pad, the relay turns on just fine. Now that relay is non-serviceable, so there's no testing involved with that. So the next thing you gotta do is check the output side. And I'll try to show you that out here. Now the horn on these is on the passenger front bumper cover basically area, right here in the front. So it's like right in this area right here. And what I noticed, I can look through here at some of the wiring and stuff like that in here and see it's all loose in there, kind of thrown back together, and I can see the horn in there, but I just needed to find the wires for the horn. So I'll try to show you. Yeah, there's wires right here for the horn. You can see right here, this is the original factory wire. They spliced in with some chintzy stuff that'll corrode. Well, where's the other wire at? Let me show you where it's at. Here's a little splice they did, and they use mini spades on there because the terminals on the horn, they're very small, so they use mini spades on there to kind of slid it onto there, and guess what, after a short period of time it fell off in there. So again, another simple cheap fix for him. He has a direction to go. I just told him to get a pigtail straight from Ford. It's weather tight, and it also, you know, it clips onto there so that you know, never falls off again. You have the horn when you need it, instead of doing hokey repairs like that. So it's all pretty simple stuff. I just had to find the exact fault. So overall, a very successful stop here in Reedley, California, considering I thought it'd be one heck of a electrical nightmare. It was all pretty simple stuff, mainly crash related.